Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Junie Moon. Junie Moon is a love mentor and author of Loving the Whole Package, Shed the Shame and Live Life Out Loud. You can find out more about Junie Moon and her wonderful work at her website, coachjuniemoon.com. Welcome, Junie Moon.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
Now, we're going to be talking today about how to find love again in midlife. And so many of us, have gone through relationships when we were younger. We didn't really know what we were doing about how to pick the right partners. And then, we find ourselves later in life wanting to create something better. So, Junie Moon, how do people go about finding love again in midlife?
Great question. What's wonderful about midlife, like you said, is we've been through a lot. We've had a lot of relationships. We have a lot of information at this point about what we like and what we don't like. And so to me, it's a reboot. It's time to pause. I think there's something very special about menopause. And this is a midlife pause where we can stop and really assess what matters to us now, what's important to us now, and then look at what we're calling in. It really is about us and what matters most to us. So to me, it's a special time to come back to our hearts with all the information we have and then reassess where we're headed. And that is the first huge step in magnetizing more love in midlife.
Now, Junie Moon, you talk about the shadow, okay? And Carl Jung said the only way to live in the light is by constantly knowing where the shadow is. And my definition of the shadow is the hidden aspects of your ego self. How would you define the shadow?
Pretty much the same. It's the part of us that we've disowned, the part of us that somewhere along the way, with all of our experiences, with all the things that have happened to us in our life and the messages we've gotten, the part of us that we say, you know what, I really can't be like that. I can't show that aspect of myself because I'll be shamed or criticized or not loved and accepted. And so it's that quality that we've lost access to. And we say in shadow work, the body of work that I'm trained in, that we take that aspect and we kind of throw it behind us and go, oh, I'm not going to be an angry person. So it's those qualities that we say, yep, can't be like that. That's our shadow.
Now, what is a love shadow?
Pretty much the same thing, except it's the shadow that is really affecting the ability to love and receive love. So when we have certain aspects into shadow, we show up differently in our relationships. So if we have our vulnerability in shadow, that would be considered a love shadow when it comes to opening up to a partner. If we have our anger in shadow, that might get in the way of us being able to set healthy boundaries in relationships. So the love shadows are shadows that affect our ability to have deeper meaning relationships, intimacy, the ability to stand up for what matters to us, the ability to see clearly in our relationship and to be able to say, hey, I need to talk about this without being so scared because maybe we threw our voice in shadow. So the love shadows are the shadows that really impact the ability to have healthy and happy and beautiful relationships.
Now, Junie Moon, Love Mentor, you have a free ebook that people can get by visiting your website, coachjuniemoon.com. Will you share for our audience about your free ebook?
Sure. It's actually not on my website. It's actually a complimentary gift to the people that are listening right now. So it is at coachjuniemoon.com /inner critic gift, because it is about taming your inner critic. One of the things that happens is we have this critic, this nasty voice that comes in our head because it doesn't want us to put ourselves out there. It says, oh, don't shine too brightly, or don't be vulnerable, or don't express yourself, all the things that we've been talking about, the shadow self. And so this ebook, it's actually a workbook. It's 10 steps to unleash your soul purpose, and we do that by step, and it's an easy workbook. It's not hours, it's maybe a good half hour of diving in. And what happens, again, talking about the shadows, is we need to understand what's in shadow, and we have to understand why we have this inner critic that keeps it in shadow and keeps us limited. And so this gift is an opportunity for me to help you walk through these steps so that you can really break through your fear and get that inner critic to quiet down. So yeah, it's at coachjuniemoon.com /inner critic gift.
Now, Junie Moon, what is the difference between our inner critic and our shadow?
That's a great question. I love that question. The shadow I see as we had an experience that shaped us, that impacted us, and we cut off a part of who we are. So boom, it's gone, right? So that's what we've done to ourselves. We've lost access to vital energy. And then the inner critic keeps it there. The inner critic tells us we shouldn't be like that. Don't shine your light. You don't deserve love. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I work with so many clients that are wanting to call in their one, feel connected and whole and yummy in life and love in their midlife, but they have this inner critic that's telling them that something's wrong with them. And so the inner critic is kind of the gatekeeper, if you will, of the shadow, keeps it in place. That's how I see it. Great question. I love that.
I really enjoy talking to other healers from around the world because we all have our perspective. And from my perspective, as a medical intuitive healer, this will now be my 28th year full-time experience working in natural healing. One of the things that I talk about is your relationship with yourself, because all the relationships in your life are based on your relationship with yourself. And if you don't have a healthy relationship with your true self, that's going to filter down into every single relationship you have with everybody, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
putting on the positive, when you have a healthy relationship with your true self, you're compassionate to yourself, you're kind to yourself, you're loving to yourself, you're accepting of your flaws and foibles. It's like, yeah, I made that mistake. Yeah, I had that experience. But there's self-forgiveness that's happening. And you talk about the inner critic. And when I'm doing medical intuitive readings, one of the things that I look for is, what is your relationship with your true self? What is your relationship with yourself? And there's a lot of different flavors of that. For example, you could be the intimidator of yourself, where you're bullying yourself. You can be the interrogator of yourself. It's like, why haven't you fixed this problem yet? Why haven't you found love yet? Why aren't you healthy yet? Why aren't you rich yet? Why aren't you? And it's this smart alecky beating up. There's poor me that's always in victim. There's aloof, where you're not really connected. And there's different ways of having a relationship with ourselves that I'm going to look at when I'm doing a medical intuitive reading. And I look at how, again, number one, do you have a healthy relationship with your true self? And then number two, if you don't, what kind of relationship with yourself do you have? And then number three, how is that affecting all your other relationships? But for me, it all goes back to your relationship with yourself. Because when we are kind, loving, and forgiving and allowing of ourselves. Because after all, I'm human, you're human, we're human, and real people make mistakes. That's a lot of times how we learn. So that's kind of my perspective on it. Now, you talk about love shadows. How do love shadows, in your professional opinion, affect our relationships?
So exactly what you just said, and I'll just piggyback on that because it was so well done. We need to connect with our true selves, or our authentic selves. And if we have aspects of ourselves in shadow, or we have that interrogator, that's like that inner critic on steroids,
Yeah.
we are putting up facades. We are looking like the good girl, the pleaser. Maybe we're over pushing how great we are because maybe our self-esteem is feeling a little shaky. And so when we have these aspects in shadow, we aren't able to truly connect deeply with others. And so, to your point, when we can heal ourselves, when we can really know who we are and get rid of or lower the volume, because my belief is that we can't really get rid of the inner critic, nor do we really want to, because it kind of keeps us in check. We just need to lower the volume and have a better relationship with it, which is what's in the ebook. It's like, how do you befriend your inner critic so it stops beating you up, so it stops having you feel like you're a victim? And so when you can identify what's in shadow and how it's affecting your self love, your self talk, and you can have a better relationship with yourself, then sky's the limit. I mean, a lot of times when clients come to me to say, and they say, I really want a partner, I'm really looking for someone to share my life with. I go, absolutely great. I'm going to teach you all these great dating tips and tools. And let's work on you first, because you can have all the great strategies. But if you're not in tune with your authentic self and you're not having that deep respect and love for yourself, you're just going to have the same kind of relationship you had in the past. And that's not going to be too healthy. So, yes, 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 we must come home to ourselves. We must have that self-respect, that self-love, that gentleness and that compassion and that forgiveness. Because if we don't, what are we going to receive from someone else? And how can we receive love and respect from someone else if we don't have that for ourselves?
Absolutely. And, I studied at length with the relationship expert, Alison Armstrong. And Alison Armstrong talks about what she calls the ideal woman. And she says that one of the differences between men and women is that in every woman's head, we have what Alison Armstrong calls the ideal woman, which is how we think we should be.
Yes,
And the thing about the ideal woman is that she's so perfect that you literally can't be that. It's an
right.
ideal, and yet men don't have that. So how, Junie Moon, as a relationship expert, a love mentor, how does this inner critic show up differently in men and women?
Yeah, we're programmed. We're all programmed. We're born with all possibilities, full spectrum of possibilities of how we're going to show up, and we're all kind of the same. We're all going to have our fears. We're going to have our challenges. We have the same emotions, right? Sadness. We have the anger. We have the fear. We have joy, and we could even have shame. And so when we have these experiences in life, we are programmed. And so men have different messages than women. Women are grow up and are bombarded by what a woman is supposed to look like by the media, and it continues on. Women are told better to better to be seen and not heard. Boys are told not to cry, suck it up and be a man. And so we're getting all these different messages at a very young age, and that shapes us. And then of course there's also the DNA and all that we bring to our human experience. So men and women are different. I mean, we have different hormones, we are different, and at the end of the day, what we take in from our culture, from our parents, from the kids down the block. That's what puts everything in shadow. Ooh, I was just beaten up because they said I was weird and different. Ooh, I better not be weird and different. Let me be the perfect little girl and be the, that's what happens. So we're sponges as kids, and we're trying to fit in and be loved. And so boys and girls, we're similar. Of course, we're similar, and we're different because we are different. And then there are the message that are very gender specific.
Great answer. And, as in my work as a medical intuitive healer, one of the things I look for is what's called genome, which are basically genetic thought patterns. So it's like, how are you programmed in your family of origin? And when we're talking about relationships and love, it's like, what did you learn about love from your family? Right? Because a lot of times my clients, they've done a lot of work on themselves, but then they really failed to look at what are the messages that I received from my family. And then you think about the culture that you grew up in. So, for example, I was raised in Savannah, Georgia, very conservative, you know, and there was messages that I definitely received about what a relationship is supposed to look like. So there's your family, messages from your family, there's messages from your culture, and then there's messages from society at large,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And since we're talking about love, we also want to talk about um, gay, lesbian, trans. So there's a lot of different ways that people can love, right? And
Absolutely.
we have to look at where did these messages come from? Because maybe the messages didn't start with you, right?
Absolutely. And that's the work that I do. That's exactly how I see it. We're born and then we take on these messages that aren't necessarily ours. I mean, I remember seeing my mom. There was always my ex-husband and I we called it the Phyllis Schreiber principle. That's my mom's name. And so she would, cook. She was pretty traditional in a lot of ways. So she would cook for the family meal, and she would feed my father first and put a lot of food on his plate, and then take care of us, and then take care of her. She was always last. And then she always gave my father extra and always made sure my father was taken care of. And so one can say, wow, she was such a loving, giving wife. And someone also can then be a fly on the wall and say, wow, she's always putting herself last and taking less to make sure he's taken care of. And again, we could say, well, that's really lovely that she sacrifices. And yet, in my opinion, from what I witnessed, is she overgave, she overcompensated. And what was that about? What did she learn from her parents, from her culture, from her generation that she, was brought up in, about women serving men and not necessarily being equal? So these are the things, like you said, family of origin. What did we witness in our parents? What did we experience from our parents? And all of that creates our inner chatter. What you were just saying, the beliefs.
Now, Junie Moon, love mentor, how do we go about healing our love shadows?
Well, the first thing is to identify that something is not working for you. I mean, that's the first thing, is awareness. Because if you don't realize that you're suffering, if you don't realize that things are not the way you want them to be, or you're not in alignment, you can't really go anywhere. Once you see that there's a different way you want to feel, and you're noticing you're behaving in ways that aren't in alignment with how you want to be, you have to start there. So as soon as you see, oh, I really want connection, but I'm being so sarcastic and mean to people, why am I saying these things? Bingo, I'm not in alignment. Something's out of integrity. And so start there. And then what happens is, and with shadow, it's an interesting thing because it's in shadow, so it's really hard to see. And that's why it is good to have a practitioner. It's good to have a friend to say, yeah, I notice these qualities in you that aren't necessarily, you said that, but that's not who you are. And so to heal the love shadows is you have to realize what's in shadow. What did you lose access to? And that starts with going, how am I being that I don't want to be? Am I being more aggressive than I would like to be? Am I shutting down? Is there a wall around my heart? So many women that come to me, and I do work with some men, but mostly women that come to me after divorce, after betrayal, after loss, maybe somebody died, their hearts, they have some big armor around it. And so their love shadow, or one of their shadows, might be the vulnerability, the opening up. So they're more closed off. And so to heal that, we have to go, yeah, there's a part of me that is scared. There's a part of me that really doesn't want to do what I did before. I don't want to take that risk. And then the question I have, who's listening right now, and for yourself, is if you don't take that risk, what's at risk if you don't? What's at risk if you don't open up your heart? What's at risk if you don't take those steps? Because sometimes we get stuck. And so to realize that we are stuck in some way in a holding pattern that's hurting us, that is the first step to having a breakthrough. And then the other steps are doing special processes to heal that, to claim that confidence, to feel that worthiness of love, and to be able to move forward in a way that is in alignment with your highest and greatest self.
I really love, Junie Moon, that you talked about whether our heart is open or closed. And one of the things that we know from statistics is that heart disease is one of the leading cause of death in the Western culture. Okay. And yes, more people could get more exercise. Yes, people could improve their diet. But as a medical intuitive healer, I absolutely know for a fact, but that some of that is spiritual, mental, and emotional. And one of the things I look at is energetically whether your heart is open or closed. And if your heart is not open, if your heart is closed, you're either punishing yourself or protecting yourself or both. So, we're talking about basically starting over in love. So, who hasn't made a few mistakes in all areas of life, right? So again, this is about cutting yourself some slack, being compassionate. But when you beat up on yourself about the mistakes that you've made in relationships, you're literally armoring your heart. And then lots of people, they've been so hurt in relationships that they close their heart to protect themselves. It's like, that hurts so bad. I'm going to make sure that nobody ever gets too close ever again.
Yep.
And yet this closing of the heart, I've actually made a little video on YouTube, which I'm going to include in the show notes, about how to open your heart and how to it's literally a very simple technique on how to heal a broken heart. And if you've gone through a breakup, you've probably had a broken heart. It hurts like nothing, right? It hurts a lot. But just realize, if you're listening to this broadcast, that if you've gone through a broken heart, whether it was last week, last month, or 12 years ago, you can absolutely heal a broken heart. And healing a broken heart and opening your heart again is absolutely critical, in my professional opinion, to being able to give and receive love.
Absolutely.
Now, Junie Moon, starting over in love can scare even the most confident of people. As a love mentor, why do you think it's so scary?
Again, with what you just said, ouch, huge ouch and heartbreak. I mean, I'm working with this woman that when she first started with me, she didn't understand. She wanted a partner. She wanted to get out there and find somebody, but she didn't understand why she was blocking herself. And then we started looking at it, and she realized, I mean, on a conscious level, because there's the conscious of, oh, I understand, I hurt myself, my heart got broken and I don't want that. That's the conscious level. And then there's the unconscious realm, which is most of our brain, like 95% of our brain, that's going, oh my God, like that was horrible. This happened. It recorded everything. And so when I was working with her, it's like, I don't understand why I'm blocked, and and why, I mean, I understand I don't want to do this again, but we had to look at that, the fear. We had to look at where the fear came from, because the interesting thing is, yes, I don't want to have my heart broken again. What we find in shadow work is it goes way back to a lot of the injuries along the way where we got cut off, where we got hurt. And that fear now, a lot of people go, well, I'm scared. But when you can go down into all the deeper levels, I'm scared of rejection. Because it happened to me when I was a 20-year-old. I'm scared of being intimate because somebody commented on my body when I was in my 30s. I mean, it just goes back and back and back. And so we have this challenge of starting over because the fear is so great, because of all of those touch points, all of those things that had us feeling like, oh my God, something's wrong with me. Or if I really put myself out there, it can happen again. And so once we shine a light on it, when we shine a light on the love shadows, when we're really bringing things into the light and finding that authentic self, it's just not as scary. And it's not to say that the fear is going to disappear. Fear is our friend. It warns us, it guides us. It's our GPS to make sure that we're with the right person, and we're showing up in the best way for us. And yet we need to be able to dance with it and move forward. That's courage, right? Courage is moving forward, and even if you feel fear. And so that's my answer.
Great insights. Now, in my 10th book, Reading the Soul, I talk about when I do a medical intuitive reading, I read physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And I also read what's happening at the soul level. Well, at the soul level, we have karma. And a great way to think of karma is like, it's like gravity. Like, I don't have to understand gravity, I don't have to believe in gravity, it just works. And my view is the most selfish thing I could ever do is be kind, generous, and thoughtful for everybody, to everyone, because whatever I put out is what I get back.
Uh-huh.
So, any rate, when I'm doing a soul reading, I look for karma. What are the karmas that you are working through? And one of the big karmas is actually heart scars. And heart scars are when you have suffered wounds to your heart that go beyond the physical, energetic, emotional, and mental. They literally hurt you at the soul level. And your heart scars can definitely be from relationships that didn't work out. They could be from your childhood, they could be from anyone or anything. But these heart scars at the soul level do, I find, prevent us from having that full reception of love, being able to give and receive, right?
Yeah.
So these wounds that we can go through as a result of relationships can be very, very deep. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing, Junie Moon, because I feel like if you've been hurt in a relationship, you really do want to clear those patterns so that you don't repeat it again. And my experience as a medical intuitive healer is that if you don't clear that karma, then you're just going to repeat the experience with someone else.
Exactly. And it's not even just in intimate, loving relationships, partnership. It's with everyone. When we have that deep wounding, it's going to affect how we communicate to all our beloveds. And so it really is important to identify that scar. I love that. And to heal it, because you can. And that is the brilliance, I think, of shadow work. I remember I was on a shamanic journey years ago when I turned 50, and we were going to that soul level of the wounding, of letting, of what we've lost. And I went, wow, this is shadow work. It's that soul retrieval work, and it's that reclamation of the beauty that's in our heart. But we got hurt, and we must heal it, because it affects everything. And like you said, body, mind, spirit, everything.
For sure. And, I encourage everyone, if you're listening to this broadcast, some of us may know, well, gosh, I'm wanting to find a partner right now. But if you have any level, any degree of physical heart disease, I really encourage you to inquire within about what's happening on all these other levels, because whenever you have dis-ease, it's always happening on all levels: physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual.
Yep.
Now, Junie Moon, you talk about strategic vulnerability. What is that?
Yeah, I came up with that phrase years ago, uh, because we're so afraid of opening up. When we've been hurt, it's like, how do I expose my truth? How do I open my heart to a beloved when I've had this history? And so that's scary, right? I've had these experiences. I don't want to have them again. Let me close that off. And so there's this part in our brain, well, not in our brain, but there's a part that we call the risk manager in shadow work, the part that assesses risk. It's nothing extravagant, and yet this part that's always has the radar for danger is always looking and watching, making sure we don't make mistakes, making sure we don't fall down the same rabbit hole. And so we have this part kind of watching at our side all the time. Some of our risk managers are working way too hard, most of us. Needless to say, if we want to open up our heart, that risk manager might be going, oh, wow, that is way too dangerous. I'm not letting you do that. And so what do? We have this one part that's going, don't do it. And this other part that's going, but I want to connect. I want to open. And so what we need to do is get that risk manager on board, to get that part that's going, oh my God, this is so scary. I don't want you to do this. And I'm going to whip up strategies to make sure you don't take that step, to get that part to have a different eye for danger and to strategize differently, because we're not the same people that we were a year ago, 10 years ago, certainly not when we were 7. We have come a long way. And so we want that risk manager, that part that's the watcher, to have different strategies. And so I call it strategic vulnerability, so that it's not just about jumping off the cliff, and it is about being mindful and having this part discerning in a different way. I call it updating the risk manager. And so when you update the risk manager to see that you have support, you have coaches, you have friends, you have access to books and YouTube channels and things like that, that it can go, oh, wait a second, it's not so scary. Let me look at my strategies, regroup, and see what I can do differently so that you can open up in a safer way. Vulnerability can be risky, but to not be vulnerable, what are we missing out on? Same thing as I was talking about before. And so if we have new strategies, we can have what I call strategic vulnerability and be safer.
Now, I love that you talk about strategic vulnerability, because I'm going to bring it back to what we were talking about earlier, which is about you yourself having a healthier relationship with your true self. Because again, if you don't have a healthy relationship with your true self, then you're going to have different psychic strategies, mental, emotional, spiritual strategies to keep people at bay. And what I find as a medical intuitive healer, that you're always going to feel empty in your relationships. You're going to feel like that you're missing something, because when you don't have a healthy relationship with your true self, you're not letting people see the real you. And you're going to feel like nobody really knows who I am. They don't know me, they don't understand me, they don't love me. And yet we have to be vulnerable in order to allow people to love who we really are. Because deep down, that's what we really want. Is we
Yes.
want to, you
I'm
want
sorry.
you want somebody to love the real you.
Mhm.
And
Right.
and in order to allow somebody to love the real you, you got to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to let down the masks. We have to let down the facades. the thing is that that can be really uncomfortable when we have had years and years of practice of I'm going to just look like I have my shit together. Oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. That we want to look a certain way, that we want to present a certain way. So I'm going to look like this independent, I've got my act together kind of person, when I might need some help and I might need to ask for some support, because maybe I threw neediness in shadow because I saw that as weakness. Maybe at a young age, I tried something and somebody looked at me and said, "Who do you think you are? You're constantly asking for help. Try to figure out how to do it on your own." And you got a message that something was wrong with you. And so we put up all these facades, these masks, and that's what when people go on first dates, guess what they're meeting? Masks. Each of them are bringing their special perfect masks, and then they don't understand why 3 months, 6 months later, it goes right out the door, and they're like, "Why are we fighting so much?" Because the masks have to come down to some point, and then you start to show your true self. So, and we want to show our healthy true self, not our shadow true self. So it's complicated. So we must know who we are, because, and there's something else you said, which is we want people to see us. We want people to love us. We want to show them who we are. And we can't do that unless we know. We can't do that unless we've flushed out those parts that we've lost access to, and go, "Oh, wait a second, I do get angry. Well, how can I be angry in a way that expresses but doesn't hurt? How do I get my needs met without feeling like I'm like a vampire and trying to suck the energy from somebody else because that's what I was told I shouldn't do?" And so we find that balance. So we have to know who we are. We need to love ourselves. And then we can say, "Hey, this is who I am." And if somebody doesn't like it, that's okay, because we are solid inside and we're going to take great care of ourselves, and we're not going to accept anything less than that.
No, your book, Junie Moon, is called Loving the Whole Package, Shed the Shame and Live Life Out Loud. So, again, if you're listening to this broadcast, I can promise you I've made a few mistakes in my life. I don't talk about them all the time, but I've definitely made mistakes. And some of them I've been ashamed of. So, Junie Moon, and so if you're listening, if you are ashamed of mistakes that you've made, you are not alone, not at all. And so, Junie Moon, is it possible to shed the shame about the mistakes that we have made?
Totally. I see it all the time. I've lived it. That's why I do what I do. Years ago, many years ago, about 17 years ago, to be specific, we're in January, so I could track it. I was 200 pounds. I had so much fear. I wasn't expressing myself. I was walking on eggshells because I was so terrified to be me. I was so terrified to poke the bear of my husband at the time, because he had a very, let's say, spicy personality. And so I played it small and I played it really careful. And guess what? That affected my son. That affected his comfort level to know that he was safe, because we had his father acting in ways that weren't necessarily safe and loving in a lot of ways. But I was scared to step up. I was scared to meet him and go, "No, this is not okay." And so I had a lot of shame about that, and I ate a lot of food over that. And that's what really shifted me when I hit that rock bottom 200 pounds. And I thought I had a weight problem, but I realized it was a self-esteem problem and all the things that we're talking about today. And I could look back and go, "Oh my God, I can't believe I was like that." And I did have a lot of shame. And sometimes I get poked with it, to be really honest, because my son has some challenges still, because he grew up in that. And because I know why I was the way I was, because of the training I had from my culture, from the kids that bullied me in middle school, because my mom was a very judgmental, critical mom when I was growing up. She's great now, but at the time it was scary. And so I brought all that into the marriage, and I can feel badly about it, or I can go, "You know what? I did the best I could, Now that I've uncovered it, I see why I was that way. And now I'm different because I did the work. And so I had a choice and I could have stayed there and I didn't. And that's why I do the work I do, because we don't have to live with all that shame. Shame is a very painful way to live, and it affects every aspect of our life, our health, our partnerships. And so, yes, to answer your question, absolutely. Again, lower the volume of shame or get rid of it completely. Yes, you can totally do that.
Now, as a medical intuitive healer, I find one of the most powerful natural healing tools at our disposal is actually forgiveness.
Mm,
And forgiveness is absolutely critical. When you don't forgive, it definitely affects your heart. Lack of forgiveness, in my experience as a medical intuitive healer, is one of the primary issues behind cancer. And so I'm just going to give our audience some forgiveness mantras. And
mhm.
when you do the forgiveness mantras, I have people put their hands on their heart. So, simple one, and the most important person to forgive is yourself. Because again, I'm human. I've made a few mistakes. Trust me.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember I had a client come in and she came in and she said, "Oh, Catherine, I've made so many mistakes." And I said, "Well, how old are you?" She's in her mid 40s. I said, "Just wait till you're my age. The list will be longer." And we had a big laugh. But there's Ho'oponopono. I love you. Please forgive me. Thank you. Um, I love you. Please forgive me. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Right. And you can say those in any order. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And you can say that about yourself. I'm so sorry, Catherine. Please forgive me, Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. I love you, Catherine. Another simple forgiveness mantra is um, I love you, Catherine. I love Catherine. Catherine loves me. I forgive Catherine. Catherine forgives me. So if you realize that you're in any degree of shame, you can use forgiveness mantras throughout the day. And sometimes people will ask me, well, how often do I need to forgive? And there's even a passage in the Bible about that. How often do you need to forgive? And it's a lot. So just like I vacuum my house regularly, so if you've got any degree of heartbreak or shame or heart disease, then these simple little forgiveness mantras are very powerful little tools that you can do on an ongoing basis, on a regular basis. And you'll know that you're done with the forgiveness if you can remember what happened and not have any charge about it, right? So you can
Yep.
remember your ex and not feel this explosive anger or shame or grief. It's just sort of like this happened, the chicken crossed the road. When you can get to neutral, then you know that you've cleaned it up. So,
Absolutely.
Junie Moon, what are some of the clues that people can notice when they have let go of the shame?
Again, what you just said, when there's peace, when you can think about a scenario or see a person and you're feeling open and cleared out. uh I what was it? Can't think of it. I can't remember what happened, but I just recently, I remember just noticing I was walking and I remember going, wow, I'm just so at peace right now. I didn't have any angst or charge about anything. And I'm like, this is how I want to feel always. And we know what that feels like. We know what it feels like to just like, I'm really good right now. And we know what it's like when our stomach gets in knots, or we think of a person and we just like start to ruminate about how we want to say something to that person. Or we start thinking, I wish I did something differently. So that would be where maybe we're judging ourselves and we're not at peace. So to me, that's how we know we've come a long way and we've healed, is when we can really feel that deep calm inside. And that's of course the way we know that there's more to work on when we don't have that, when we feel that tightness, when we have our brain just like blah 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 blah, and we just can't stop it. That's when we know we need to empty out. And I love that the cleaning metaphor, because it's true. We're constantly being bombarded with all these experiences. We need to release, we need to let go, and we need to continue to do our healing work. So yeah.
Yeah. Another tool that I find very helpful for releasing shame as a medical intuitive healer, I'll do a healing with somebody to complete their karma with someone. So
Mm,
let's say you've broken up with someone, whether it's your boyfriend or girlfriend or ex-wife or ex-husband. Well, you want to do a healing to complete your karma with that person. So again, you don't keep repeating that. And we have to remember that many of our relationships are the result of what I refer to as soul agreements. And when you have a soul agreement, I say and I talk about this in my book, Reading the Soul, it can be three ways. I'm here to help you, or you're here to help me, or we're here to help each other.
mm,
Whatever it is, it was a soul agreement, it was sacred. But just like you can be done with legal contracts, you can also be done with soul agreements. And when you do that work to clear your karma and to complete your karma with another person, then you can let go of the shame, the negativity, and really release a tremendous amount of negative, heavy energy that's holding you back.
yeah.
So, Junie Moon, any final thoughts for our audience?
Don't stop dreaming about how you want your life to be. Uh, don't I don't want to end up with a don't. How about keep going for what you desire, keep loving yourself, and if you find yourself bumping up against those edges, welcome those edges, because that is something that's your GPS to say something needs to change, something is off, something is out of alignment. And so listen to those feelings inside of you as indicators that something needs to be moved, and then do something about it. Find the support you need, because you deserve the life that you crave.
You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Our guest today has been love mentor Junie Moon. You can find out more about her and her wonderful work at coachjuniemoon.com. And remember, if you're listening to this broadcast, you are a soul and you deserve to be loved and to love and be loved. Some of the greatest joy in our life happens when we heal our hearts and learn to love and be loved. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.